Hello folks, so we're back at the Mustang today doing some more stuff with all the parts we got. So what I'm going to do or go through the process of changing a leaf spring. I've already done the driver's side, and to say this was a royal pain in the backside is the biggest understatement I think I could think of. But thought I'd share some things I learned with you and kind of go over what we did using the passenger side kind of as a guide. Not going to go through the whole process of how to do this, just because honestly, if you're going to do this yourself, it's going to take several hours unless you get really lucky. So let's get down and take a look at what it takes to change out a leaf spring on a 67 Mustang. Okay, so we're under the car now looking at the leaf spring on the passenger side. It's this, let me get my hand up in here. It's this big metal thing right there is the leaf spring. Okay. It's not, you know, there's some parts of this that are just not too bad. Okay, so up here, let's see if I can get a shot up in there. Can't tell if you can see things with that. Okay, so this is the rear shackle. And if I can get up in here, sorry, the sun is just horrible. Can't really see what I'm looking at here. Okay, let me back down some. Okay, so back up in here, you've got two bolts. You've got one that is up here where my fingers are. That goes through the frame of the car. There's a bolt that goes through from the other side of the frame to this side and comes through. And then you've got the one down here. See if I can see it. Yep, here, that goes through the shackle and through the leaf spring. Okay, more than likely on your car, if these have been around a while, these are going to be pretty rusty. But you should hit them with some PB blaster a couple of times, let them sit for a little while, and they should come loose pretty easily. If they don't, you can apply some heat. Do be careful because this is right next to the gas tank, so obviously you want to be very careful about what you do there. Okay guys, I wanted to break in here real quick and add a couple other thoughts about this rear shackle that we were talking about. So in addition to potentially using heat or whatever, you can also cut that thing out. You can use a grinding wheel, or cutting wheel I should say, or a sawzall to cut those out. If you can't, you can either cut the shackle or the bolt, nut, whatever. Also should mention that through both the frame and the leaf spring itself, there is some rubber bushings. Those can get kind of tight around the bolt, which may make it difficult to pull the bolt through and out at any given time. So you may need to get in there and dig some of that bushing out and spray some WD-40 or PB blaster or something like that up into the areas where the bolts go through the frame and through that those rubber bushings and whatnot. So just a little tip out there, something I'd forgotten to mention when I was filming the original video, but hopefully that'll help you. Now we'll go back to our regularly scheduled video. Now, really the first part of this that you need to, pardon, I'm sure I'm getting you all dizzy here, but first thing you need to do is work on this part back here. So right in, whoops, let me get my finger. This here is your shock mount. This part right there is your rear shock, and it goes up into a hole in the trunk, right? So first thing you want to do is go ahead and disconnect that rear shock. And it's just, I think it's a 9/16 bolt there. So you're going to need to loosen this up. You get a socket on here, and you need to get, if you can, if you need to, if it starts spinning the shock, you need to get some sort of wrench, like a pipe wrench or something on the shock here to hold it in place while you get that busted loose. Once you do that, this bushing and washer should just fall away, and then you literally just push the shock up until it comes clear of the bracket here. Okay, Once you have done that, got that out of the way, then the next thing you want to do is go ahead and jack the car up a little bit and get the car, get the tire off so you have room to work under here. You also want to make sure you put a jack underneath the rear axle to support it. Try to keep it as level as possible. Don't go too high with it. So once you've got the car supported and the tire off and the axle off, then you want to go ahead and undo the 4 bolts. We've got these U-bolts here that go over the axle and come through to the shock mount down here, and you want to bust those loose. If they are so rusted that you can't get through them, you can just cut through the U-bolts if you have to with a grinding wheel or a sawzall, something like that. On my driver's side, those came loose pretty good. Again, I've been hitting them with PB Blaster, penetrating oil to get those loose. Then once you've gotten those off, then the shock plate, shock mount plate should come off. You may have to hit it with a hammer a little bit or knock the U-bolts up a little bit to get that out. But you know, once you get it off, then that makes the spring, you know, loose there. Okay, once you got that off, you want to go ahead and what I did is I went ahead and jacked the axle up a little bit to take tension off the spring, and then that's when you're going to come back here to the rear shackle over here and loosen it up. So you want to go through and get that off. Once you do that, then the leaf spring should be free and you can float it to the ground. Okay, and now comes the hard part. The front eyepiece of the leaf spring. So you'll see up there, that's, well, let me get past the emergency brake cable mount. You'll see a bolt that is showing through the frame right there. Comes through, and then on this other side, let's see if I can get it in the shot yet, right there is another mount that's attached to the car body that bolt feeds through, and there's a nut on the side of it. Now what you can't see really well, I'll try to put in another picture here, but the leaf spring loops around. It creates a loop up there that bolt feeds through. In that loop is a rubber bushing. Inside that rubber bushing is a metal sleeve, and I'll try to insert a picture that shows that a little bit from the new leaf spring. But that metal sleeve, when they put these together at the factory, they didn't put any sort of grease or anti-seize or anything in there. So what happens over time is all this wonderful rust you see that's here also gets into that sleeve, and in essence welds that bolt that passes through the frame and through the leaf spring and the mount. Rust those out, so they basically come welded together. And even if you dig, like I did on the driver's side, you dig out part of that rubber bushing in there, the bolt, if you get it to turn, just, I mean, it's turning the sleeve in there, it's not coming out. So what you've got to do, and I'll show this, you've got to cut through that bolt, preferably between the sleeve and the frame. So you're going to cut through on this side between where the, let me try to get up under here so you can see a little more. So you want to try to cut through and get up right up in through there, right between the frame and the leaf spring, preferably where that sleeve is not. So if you can get between the frame and the sleeve, that's where you want to cut. You want to cut through the bolt on the side that the head is, where the frame is. Once that is done, then you're going to come over, and you may have to cut through on this side as well, depending on how. You can also try bending that bracket mount there. Let's connect the body out a little bit. Again, kind of gauge that, because if it's rusty, you could bend it too far and break it off, I suppose. But anyway, but you basically got to cut that out. To help facilitate that, recommend you cut the leaf spring off as close to that mounting point as possible. So you can use a cutting wheel or a sawzall to do that with. To cut these spaces between the frame and between that, you're going to have to use a sawzall. At least I had to. I found that I could not get a cutting wheel between the frame and the leaf spring and the sleeve to fit without possibly damaging the frame, and you certainly don't want to do that. So you want to definitely go cut through that with a sawzall, because the blade's a little bit thinner and it's a little bit longer and it's a little bit more flexible. So you want to do that there. So I'll show you what the new leaf spring looks like in just a second. But also, while I was down here, it's also a good time. Now I've cut out the exhaust here, so this big space that you see right here is where the muffler would be on this particular car. This is with an inline 6, 200 cubic inch, straight 6 engine. So the muffler actually fits up in here where my hand is. That's out. I've cut all that stuff out. And I've started cleaning the undercarriage up using wire brush, wire wheel, spraying some rust converter up in here just to keep it from getting any worse. I'm going to come back with an undercoating of some sort underneath here as well. But this whole area was covered in grease and grime and whatnot, so it looks much better under here. Okay, so now, pardon me, as we flip around to this side. So here you can see the new leaf spring in place. Got that from CJ Pony Parts. It's just a stock leaf spring. Don't have the new rear shock installed yet. I do have a new one. The actual old shock is still in there. You can see it hanging down there. But you can see, and I also went ahead and put in new shackles, new bolts. All the bolts in here, including the U-bolts, are new. I cleaned up the rear shock plate as well, painted it, primed it, and whatnot, and got it all in there. But so this is a process and a half to get going. So just make sure you have time to do it. These come out. Always fun coming out from other Mustangs. So that's kind of the process with this. There's several other videos that talk about this. Maniac Mechanic Auto Resto Mod has a good one about it. But just make sure you have plenty of time. This is not going to be as easy as you probably think. You know, I thought this was going to be a simple couple-hour job, right? Just go in. Oops, get my hand in the way. Go in, take out a few bolts, get the old part out, put the new part in, and we'd be done. But it took at least 4 hours just to cut through that bolt on the front of the leaf spring. And like I said, about an hour and a half of that was charging time for my Sawzall battery, because I only have a battery powered Sawzall. I don't have an electrical one or whatnot. So I had to plug the battery in to charge, and I only have one battery because all my others apparently have died and don't take a charge. So it's something to keep in mind. If you're going to use a battery powered one, it's a good idea to have extra batteries. That would have sped it up by a good hour and a half on that. Plus I had to wait and give time for the saw to actually cool down some, because it was getting pretty hot cutting on that. Now maybe you have a better tool than I do, but so to do this, you're definitely going to need a Sawzall. You're going to need or recommend some sort of angle grinder with a good cutting wheel on it, and of course sockets. I think I used and box end opener wrenches too. I think I used 9/16, 3/4, and maybe a 5/8 socket is what in open end box end wrenches on this. Again, no metrics, because this is not a metric car, right? So those are basic tools you're going to need, as well as some jack stands and those kind of things. But you're probably aware of that. So That's what I've been working on. What I do while I was waiting for the battery to charge in those hour and a half, I certainly didn't let the time lapse on that. Did a couple of things. So let's take a look at that. So one of the things I did was, let's see if I can get it where I can get some light on it. Move this out a little bit. There we go. Okay. I cleaned up this wheel. It was a rusty mess, kind of like the underside there of the car. So I cleaned it up with a wire wheel and sprayed some rust converter on it and primed it and painted it so it looks much, much better. I probably ought to do that to the brake drum too. The other thing I did was I went ahead up here. See if that light's going to work. Yep, there we go. And I pulled the valve cover off, which was a mess, and so I could get it all cleaned up. Just putting that trash bag over there to protect it so nothing gets in the valve train and down the engine. But I've been working on it, and I'll stick a picture of the before in here. But I'm working on getting it all cleaned up, right? So there's the valve cover. I've got it all primed here. So it's drying, the primer's drying. I'm going to come back in and paint it nice, good Ford blue. So we're going to get that on there. And I cut the old exhaust off, which I'd hoped the recycling people would take it, but they didn't. So there's the old part of the old exhaust. I've been working on trying to get the manifold off from it as I'm blocking the shot. There we go. Not a professional camera operator. Okay, so there's that exhaust, and you also see the old driver's side leaf spring there, and you can see there where I cut it off. So anyway, we got a good bit of things still moving on the Mustang. Progress is being made. We're going to get the old girl back in shape for too long. She doesn't look too bad though. I mean, even jacked up, she looks pretty good still, right? I mean, still need to work on that interior some. But oh my God, from the moldy mess it was, just, you know, in March of this year, it certainly looks a lot better than it did. So anyway, so with that, we're going to call it a video. Hope you've learned a few things. Would have showed you the live action stuff, but would have taken hours, and all my good camera and tripod went away when I sold my company and whatnot. So anyway, with that, y'all have a good one, and I'll see y'all in the next video.